10 p.m. on a Tuesday. That's when my wife's boss decided our marriage needed emergency surgery. I was watching the late news, nursing my third cup of coffee that day, the only thing keeping me upright after another soul-crushing day in pharmaceutical compliance. 14 years of checking boxes, filing reports, and making sure our company didn't accidentally poison half of Minnesota. Exciting stuff. The doorbell rang. Cambria shot up from the couch like she'd been electrocuted. "That's Zane," she announced, smoothing her hair. "Work emergency." Zane Merrinor stood on our porch in a $2,000 suit, looking like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of executive who probably practiced his handshake in the mirror. He flashed that $1,000,000 smile that made pharmaceutical boards open their wallets. "Wilder, sorry to interrupt your evening," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, calculated. "Crisis with the Morrison account. Need Cambria's expertise." I glanced at my wife. She was already grabbing her purse, avoiding eye contact. Strange, considering the Morrison account had been closed for 6 months. "At 10 p.m.? I asked. "International clients," Zane explained smoothly. "Time zones, you know how it is." Actually, I did know how it was. I'd been in pharmaceutical compliance for 15 years. Morrison Pharmaceuticals was a domestic company based in Ohio. Their business hours ended at 5 p.m. Eastern. "How long will this take?" I asked Cambria. "Few hours, maybe overnight," she said, still not meeting my eyes. You know how these things go. I knew exactly how these things went. In compliance, emergency calls meant someone had violated FDA regulations and lawyers were circling. They didn't require overnight stays at luxury hotels. "Drive safe," I said, watching them head toward Zane's black Mercedes. The moment their tail lights disappeared, I grabbed my keys. 15 years in compliance teaches you to document everything. I'd learned that lesson the hard way during the Hartwell investigation, when missing paperwork cost 3 people their jobs. So I followed them, keeping my distance, my phone ready. They didn't head toward our office complex. Instead, Zane drove straight downtown to the Ritz-Carlton. I parked across the street, watching through my windshield as a valet took Zane's keys. The kid handed him a ticket, number 247. I photographed everything, the timestamp, the license plate, the valet ticket number clearly visible in Zane's hand. They walked into the lobby like they owned the place. Cambria's hand rested on Zane's lower back, a gesture I recognized from our early dating years. Intimate, possessive. I waited 20 minutes, then approached the valet. "Hey, my boss asked me to grab something from his Mercedes," I said, showing the kid a 20. "Black sedan, ticket 247? "Sorry, man. Can't let you into someone else's car." "Fair enough. Is he staying overnight? I might need to come back tomorrow." The valet shrugged. "Presidential suite, 2-night reservation." 2 nights, for a work emergency that would take a few hours. I drove home, my mind racing. 15 years of marriage and Cambria had never lied to me about work. She was ambitious, driven, sometimes cold, but never dishonest. At least, I'd never caught her being dishonest. I spent the next hour documenting everything: timestamps, photographs, the valet's statement about the 2-night reservation. Then I did what any good compliance officer would do. I started investigating. Our company directory listed Zane Merrinor as Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. His employee ID was active, his security clearance current, but something felt wrong. In 15 years of working for the same company, I'd learned to spot inconsistencies. I pulled up Zane's personnel file through the compliance database. His social security number was valid, his background check clean, but his hiring date was only 18 months ago, and his previous employment history was sparse. For a senior VP, that was unusual. I cross-referenced his name with industry publications. Zane Merrinor had given interviews, attended conferences, even won awards. But in every photograph, he looked slightly different. Subtle changes, hair color, facial hair, Even his smile seemed practiced, artificial. My phone buzzed. Text message from Cambria. Going to be all night, don't wait up. All night. For a Morrison account that didn't exist anymore. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to corporate compliance. If Zane Merrinor was using company resources for personal activities, that was a violation worth investigating. And if my wife was involved, well, that was a different kind of violation entirely. Dear Compliance Team, I wrote, I need to report suspicious activity involving Senior VP Zane Merrinor and potential misuse of company resources. I attached the photographs, the timestamps, and a detailed summary of the evening's events. Then I hit send. The response came back within an hour, even at midnight. Janet Morrison from Internal Compliance, a woman I'd worked with for years, called me directly. Wilder, we have a problem, she said without preamble. Zane Merrinor's employee records don't match federal databases. What do you mean? His social security number belongs to someone else. Someone named Kellen Brooks. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. Are you sure? I've run it 3 times. Kellen Brooks, age 48, wanted on federal fraud charges in 6 states. His photograph matches your boss perfectly. I stared at the broken ceramic scattered across my kitchen tiles. My wife was spending the night with a federal fugitive. Janet, I need you to pull every project Cambria has worked on with Zane in the last 18 months. Already on it. Wilder, this is bigger than an affair. If she's been signing off on his projects without proper verification, she could be complicit in whatever he's running. Exactly. I'm calling the FBI in the morning. I hung up and walked to my living room window. The street was quiet, suburban, normal. My neighbors were asleep in their beds, trusting that their spouses were exactly who they claimed to be. I'd spent 15 years ensuring pharmaceutical companies followed regulations, maintained integrity, protected public safety. Apparently, I'd forgotten to apply those same standards to my own home. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Cambria. Love you. See you tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening, not tomorrow morning. She was planning to spend the entire next day with Kellen Brooks, alias Zane Merrinor, federal fugitive. I typed back, love you too. Hope the Morrison crisis gets resolved. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. I spent the rest of the night on my laptop researching everything I could find about Kellen Brooks. The man had quite a resume: securities fraud in Nevada, identity theft in California, pharmaceutical fraud in Texas. He specialized in infiltrating legitimate companies, using their resources to run illegal operations. And my wife had been working closely with him for 18 months. By sunrise, I had compiled a comprehensive file. Every project Cambria had signed off on, every overnight business trip, every emergency that had pulled her away from home. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. The Morrison account wasn't the only fictional client. There was Henderson Pharmaceuticals, Blackstone Medical, and Riverside Research, all companies that existed only on paper, all requiring extensive overnight consultations. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Janet Morrison again. Wilder, the FBI wants to meet with you this morning. Agent Beck Darren, Federal Task Force on Pharmaceutical Fraud. What should I tell Cambria? Nothing. If she's involved, we can't risk her warning Brooks. And if she's innocent? Janet paused. Then she's been manipulated by a professional con artist. Either way, she's in serious trouble. I showered, dressed for work, and tried to act normal. Cambria came home at 8 a.m., looking tired but satisfied. She kissed my cheek, the same perfunctory gesture she'd used for months. How did the Morrison crisis turn out? I asked. Resolved, she said simply. I'm exhausted, going to shower and head into the office. Will you be working late again tonight? She hesitated. Probably. You know how these international accounts are? I knew exactly how they were. Fictional. I'll probably grab dinner with Tom from accounting, I said. Don't wait up. She nodded, already heading toward the stairs. Sounds good. Tom from accounting didn't exist, but Agent Beck Darren certainly did. Agent Beck Darren looked like he'd stepped out of a law enforcement textbook, mid-50s, gray hair, steel-rimmed glasses, and the kind of steady gaze that made guilty people confess without being asked. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from our office complex. Mr. Sornell, thank you for coming forward, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Your compliance report triggered several federal investigations. How many? 6 states, possibly more. Kellen Brooks has been using your company as a front for illegal pharmaceutical distribution. Your wife's signatures are on every shipping manifest. I felt my stomach drop. She might not know what she's signing. That's what we're hoping to determine. Tell me about her behavior over the last 18 months. I thought back to when Zane first joined the company. Cambria had been excited about working with such an experienced executive. She'd started staying late, taking on additional projects, traveling more frequently. She became more ambitious, I said, more focused on advancement. Did she bring work home? Never. Said it was confidential. Agent Darren made notes. What about her income? Any unexplained expenses or purchases? I considered this. Cambria had been spending more money lately. New clothes, expensive dinners, a luxury spa membership. She'd claimed it was necessary for networking with high-level clients. Some increased spending, but nothing dramatic. We need to examine your financial records, joint accounts, credit cards, everything. Of course. Agent Darren, what exactly is Brooks accused of? Manufacturing and distributing unregulated pharmaceutical compounds, specifically synthetic compounds that mimic prescription medications but aren't FDA approved. He's been using legitimate companies to ship these products through dark web channels. My head was spinning. And you think Cambria is involved? Her signature authorizes every shipment. Either she's complicit or she's been systematically deceived. I preferred the latter option, but my compliance training had taught me to follow evidence, not hope. What happens now? We continue surveillance. Brooks doesn't know we've identified him yet. We want to catch him in the act, with evidence that will stick in court. What about Cambria? That depends on what we find. I spent the rest of the day at work, trying to act normal while my world collapsed around me. Every interaction with colleagues felt surreal. Did they know? Had anyone else noticed the irregularities? At lunch, I ran into Lacey from compliance. She was one of the sharpest investigators in our department, with an eye for detail that rivaled mine. Wilder, you look terrible, she said, joining me at a corner table. Rough night? Work stuff? She studied my face. This is about the Merrinor investigation, isn't it? I nearly choked on my sandwich. You know about that? Janet asked me to review some shipping records. Wilder, there are serious irregularities in Strategic Development's client accounts. How serious? Phantom companies, fictional addresses, shipping manifests that don't match FDA databases. Either Merrinor is running something illegal, or he's incredibly incompetent. What did you tell Janet? Everything I found. She's meeting with federal agents this afternoon. I realized that multiple people were now investigating my wife's boss. The net was closing, and Cambria was right in the center. My phone buzzed. Text from Cambria. Another late night. Don't wait up again. Another night with Brooks. Another night of whatever they were really doing. I texted back. Everything okay? You've been working a lot of late nights lately? Big project. Should wrap up soon. Should wrap up soon. That sounded ominous. After work, I drove home and began my own investigation. If Cambria was innocent, I needed to find evidence that would clear her. If she was guilty, I needed to know how deep this went. I started with her home office. Cambria kept meticulous records, filing every document with obsessive precision, but her recent files were sparse. just basic project summaries without supporting documentation. I found her laptop in the bedroom, password protected, of course. But after 15 years of marriage, I knew her patterns. She used variations of our anniversary date and our son Ethan's birthday. The third attempt worked, Ethan Cambria 2019. Her email revealed everything. Months of correspondence with Zane, but not about work. Personal messages, intimate conversations, detailed plans for their business trips. My wife had been having an affair, but that was just the beginning. I found shipping schedules, product codes, and client communications that made no sense for legitimate pharmaceutical business. Compounds with names I didn't recognize, shipped to addresses that seemed residential rather than commercial. Then I found the hotel receipts. 73 separate overnight stays at luxury hotels over 18 months. All billed to company accounts as client meetings, all coinciding with Cambria's work emergencies. I cross-referenced the dates with our family calendar. Ethan's college visits, my business trips, family gatherings. Every time I was away or distracted, Cambria had another emergency. But the worst discovery was in her deleted emails folder. Messages about me, conversations with Zane about how to handle Wilder's suspicions, plans to transfer assets before I became problematic, discussion about something called the coffee solution. The coffee solution. I thought about my chronic fatigue over the last 8 months, the way I'd been sleeping more, feeling sluggish, struggling to concentrate. I'd attributed it to work stress and age. I grabbed the coffee container from our kitchen. Organic, fair trade, expensive. Cambria's choice. She'd been making my coffee every morning for months, insisting it was part of her new caring wife routine. My hands were shaking as I sealed a sample in a plastic bag. If my suspicions were correct, my wife hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been slowly poisoning me. My phone rang. Agent Darren. Mr. Sornell, we need to meet again. Tonight. There have been developments. What kind of developments? Brooks is planning to leave the country. Soon. And your wife is helping him. I looked around our kitchen, at the life we'd built together, at the coffee she'd been making me every morning. Everything was contaminated. Agent Darren, I think my wife has been poisoning me. Silence on the other end. Then, we'll add that to the charges. Agent Darren met me at the FBI field office at 9 p.m. The building was mostly empty, fluorescent lights humming over empty cubicles and conference rooms. He led me to a secure interview room where another agent was waiting. This is Agent Martinez, forensics specialist, Darren said. She'll handle the coffee analysis. Agent Martinez was younger than Darren, with short dark hair and the kind of intense focus I recognized from compliance work. She examined the coffee sample I'd brought, sealing it in an evidence bag. We'll have preliminary results within hours, she said. If there's arsenic or other toxins, we'll find them. Arsenic. The word hit me like a physical blow. How long would that take to affect someone? Depends on the dosage. Small amounts over months could cause chronic fatigue, memory problems, digestive issues. Larger doses would be more immediately dangerous. I thought about the last 8 months. The exhaustion, the difficulty concentrating, the way I'd started relying on Cambria for more and more daily decisions. She'd been systematically weakening me. Mr. Sornell, Agent Darren said, we need to discuss Brooks' escape plan. He spread photographs across the table, surveillance shots of Zane and Cambria at various locations. The airport, a downtown bank, the Venezuelan embassy. Embassy? I asked. Brooks has been cultivating diplomatic contacts. We believe he's arranged for false credentials that would allow him to claim asylum. And Cambria? She's listed as his wife on the diplomatic paperwork. His wife. Not his business partner, not his colleague. His wife. That's impossible. We're still married. The documents claim you're deceased. Automobile accident 3 months ago. I stared at the paperwork. A certificate declaring my passing, complete with official seals and signatures. According to the Venezuelan government, I'd been gone since March. She's been planning this for months, I said. Longer. We've traced financial transactions going back 18 months. Assets being transferred, accounts being closed, property being liquidated. Your wife has been systematically erasing your legal existence. Agent Martinez returned with a tablet showing preliminary test results. Arsenic, she confirmed. Consistent dosing over approximately 8 months. Not enough to cause immediate harm, but sufficient to cause chronic symptoms. Would it have gotten worse? Eventually, yes. This dosage pattern suggests someone was either planning to increase the amount or maintain it indefinitely. I felt sick. Not from the arsenic, though that probably wasn't helping, but from the realization that my wife had been slowly erasing me from existence. Physically, legally, financially. What's the timeline for Brooks's escape? I asked. Soon, tomorrow, possibly tonight. We're monitoring the embassy, but once he's inside, we lose jurisdiction. What about Cambria? Same problem. If she enters the embassy with diplomatic credentials, we can't touch her. I thought about this. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a federal fugitive investigation. My wife was planning to disappear with a con artist, leaving me poisoned and legally non-existent. Agent Darren, what if we force their hand, make them move before they're ready? What do you mean? I'm a compliance officer. I know how to create pressure, force mistakes. If Brooks thinks his cover is blown, he might panic. That's dangerous. Cornered criminals make unpredictable choices. More dangerous than letting them escape? Darren considered this. What do you have in mind? I spent the next hour outlining a plan. It was risky, probably stupid, but it was better than watching my wife disappear with a federal fugitive. The plan was simple. I would confront Cambria at home, make her think I knew everything, force her to contact Brooks. The FBI would monitor all communications, track their movements, and arrest them before they reached the embassy. If this goes wrong, Agent Darren warned, you could be in serious danger. I'm already in serious danger. My wife has been poisoning me for 8 months. I drove home at midnight, my mind racing with possibilities. The house was dark. Cambria was still at her emergency meeting. I had a few hours to prepare. I started by documenting everything. Every email, every financial transaction, every hotel receipt. I uploaded copies to a secure cloud server and sent links to Agent Darren. If something happened to me, the evidence would survive. Then I prepared for confrontation. Cambria came home at 2 a.m., moving quietly through the house like she was trying not to wake me. But I was waiting in the kitchen, coffee cup in hand. The same coffee she'd been poisoning for months. Working late again? I asked. She jumped, dropping her purse. Wilder! You scared me. Why are you awake? Couldn't sleep. Too much caffeine, I guess. I held up the coffee cup. This stuff you've been making is pretty strong. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. You should switch to decaf, she said. Probably. Hey, I had an interesting conversation with Janet Morrison today, about the Morrison account. Oh? Funny thing. Morrison Pharmaceuticals closed their account 6 months ago, so I'm curious what emergency you've been working on. Cambria sat down across from me, her expression carefully neutral. There are confidentiality issues. I can't discuss client details. Even with your husband? Especially with my husband. You work in compliance, Wilder. You know how this works. I did know how it worked. I also knew how lies worked, how deception worked, how slowly poisoning your spouse worked. Cambria, is there anything you want to tell me? She met my eyes directly. Like what? Like why you've been spending nights at the Ritz-Carlton with a federal fugitive named Kellen Brooks. Her face went completely still. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached for her phone. I wouldn't, I said. The FBI is monitoring all communications. Her hand froze. What are you talking about? Zane Merrinor doesn't exist. Kellen Brooks is wanted on federal fraud charges in 6 states, and you've been helping him run illegal pharmaceutical operations through our company. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I have shipping manifests with your signature, hotel receipts for 73 overnight stays, and diplomatic paperwork listing you as his wife. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. You also don't have to keep poisoning my coffee, but apparently that's been optional. She stopped moving. What? Arsenic? Cambria? 8 months of small doses. The FBI tested it tonight. For the first time since I'd known her, my wife looked genuinely terrified. Wilder, I can explain. I'm sure you can, but you'll be explaining it to federal agents. She grabbed her phone and ran toward the stairs. I let her go. Agent Darren was monitoring all cell towers in the area. Every call, every text, every desperate message to Brooks would be recorded. 20 minutes later, I heard her car leave the driveway. My phone rang immediately. Agent Darren. She's heading toward downtown, probably going to warn Brooks. Are you ready? Units are in position. Mr. Sornell, you did well. This should give us everything we need. I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by 15 years of marriage and lies. Tomorrow, my wife would be in federal custody. Brooks would be arrested. The illegal pharmaceutical operation would be shut down. But tonight, I was just a man who'd discovered that the person he trusted most in the world had been slowly erasing his existence. I poured the rest of the coffee down the drain and went to bed. 3 days later, Cambria and Brooks were arrested at the Venezuelan embassy. They'd made it through the front gate before FBI agents intercepted them, diplomatic credentials half-processed. The media coverage was extensive. Pharmaceutical executive and compliance manager wife caught in federal fraud investigation. I watched the news coverage from my living room, sipping tea instead of coffee. The arsenic was slowly leaving my system, and my energy was returning. Apparently, I'd been living in a fog for 8 months without realizing it. My phone had been ringing constantly. Reporters, colleagues, neighbors. Everyone wanted to know how I'd missed my wife's criminal activities. The answer was simple. I'd trusted her. In compliance work, trust is a luxury you can't afford. In marriage, I'd thought it was essential. Agent Darren called on Thursday morning. Both suspects are in federal custody, he reported. Brooks is cooperating, providing information about his network. Your wife isn't. What does that mean? She's claiming ignorance about the illegal activities. Says Brooks manipulated her, convinced her the projects were legitimate. Do you believe that? The evidence suggests otherwise. She signed shipping manifests for compounds that don't exist in any FDA database. She authorized payments to companies that were never incorporated. Either she's the most negligent compliance manager in pharmaceutical history, or she knew exactly what she was doing. I thought about the diplomatic paperwork listing me as no longer living. What about the certificate that records my passing? She claims Brooks handled all the embassy documentation, says she never saw the paperwork listing you as deceased. But she was planning to leave the country with him. She admits to the affair, but denies knowledge of the criminal enterprise. It was a smart defense. Cambria had always been intelligent, calculating. She was positioning herself as the victim of a sophisticated con artist. Agent Darren, what are the chances she'll be convicted? With the evidence we have? High. But her sentence will depend on her level of cooperation. After hanging up, I realized I had a choice to make. I could let the federal case proceed, trust the system to deliver justice, and try to rebuild my life. Or I could take a more active role in ensuring Cambria faced consequences for what she'd done. I chose the latter. My first stop was our bank. Cambria had been systematically transferring assets, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left my name on several accounts. As her legal husband, I had access to funds she'd probably forgotten about. I withdrew everything: checking, savings, investment accounts, all of it. Then I transferred the money to a new account in my name only. If Cambria wanted to hire expensive lawyers, she'd have to find another funding source. Next, I visited our insurance company. Cambria's arrest had triggered several policy violations. Her life insurance was voided due to criminal activity. Our homeowner's policy was canceled due to fraudulent claims. Apparently, she'd been listing expensive items that didn't exist. But the most satisfying stop was our country club. The Lakewood Country Club was where Cambria had spent years building her professional network. She'd cultivated relationships with pharmaceutical executives, hosted charity events, and positioned herself as a rising star in the industry. I met with the membership committee on Friday afternoon. "Mr. Sornell, we're so sorry about your situation," said Margaret Henderson, the club president. "This must be incredibly difficult." "Thank you. I wanted to discuss Cambria's membership status. Of course, given the federal charges, we'll need to review her membership." I placed a folder on the conference table. "I thought you might want to see this." The folder contained copies of every fraudulent document Cambria had signed, every illegal transaction she'd authorized, and every hotel receipt from her affair with Brooks. I'd organized it like a compliance report, with clear timelines and supporting evidence. "She used club events to recruit clients for the illegal operation," I explained. "The Henderson Pharmaceutical account? That was your husband's company, Margaret. Brooks used information from club conversations to create a fictional client account." Margaret's face went pale. "Richard never authorized any account with Cambria's company, because it didn't exist. But your husband's name is on shipping manifests for illegal pharmaceutical compounds. If the FBI traces those connections—" I didn't need to finish the sentence. Margaret understood immediately. "We'll be terminating her membership effective immediately," she said. "I thought you might." My next stop was more personal. Soren Valden lived 3 houses down from us, a retired Marine who'd become one of my closest friends over the years. He'd been asking questions since Cambria's arrest, clearly concerned about my situation. "Wilder, come in," he said, opening his front door. "How are you holding up?" "Better every day. The arsenic is clearing my system." His expression darkened. "I still can't believe she was poisoning you. Right under my nose." "She was careful about it. Small doses, gradual onset. I thought I was just getting older." We sat in his living room, and I explained what I'd learned about Cambria's systematic deception. The financial transfers, the falsified certificate, the escape plan. "What do you need?" Soren asked. "Information. You know everyone in the neighborhood. Has anyone noticed unusual activity around our house?" Soren nodded. "Actually, yes. Strange cars parked on the street, people taking photographs. I thought they were reporters, but the timing was wrong." "What do you mean?" "This was months ago before the arrest. Someone was surveilling your house." I felt a chill. "Brooks people?" "Probably. Wilder, there's something else. Your garage has been broken into." "What?" "Last week, while you were meeting with the FBI, I saw someone prying open the side door. Called the police, but they were gone by the time officers arrived. I thought about what might be in my garage worth stealing. Tools, lawn equipment, boxes of old paperwork. Nothing valuable. Unless someone was looking for evidence." "Soren, I need a favor. Can you help me search the house for surveillance equipment?" We spent the next 2 hours going through every room. Soren had military experience with electronic surveillance, and he knew what to look for. We found 3 devices. A listening device in the kitchen, hidden inside the coffee maker. A camera in the bedroom, disguised as a smoke detector. And a GPS tracker attached to my car, hidden under the rear bumper. "They've been watching you for months," Soren said. "Recording everything. Every conversation, every movement. The question is, what were they planning to do with the information?" I thought about the falsified certificate, the systematic asset transfers, the slow, deliberate contamination. Brooks and Cambria hadn't just been planning to disappear, they'd been planning to wipe me out completely. They were going to make it look like an accident, I said. Increase the arsenic dosage, stage something that looked like suicide or accidental overdose. Then disappear with your assets. Exactly. Soren helped me remove all the surveillance equipment. We documented everything, photographed the devices, and called Agent Darren. This changes things, the agent said when he arrived. Premeditated surveillance suggests conspiracy to commit more serious crimes. Like what? Attempted homicide, financial fraud, identity theft. Mr. Sornell, your wife and Brooks weren't just running a pharmaceutical scam. They were planning to eliminate you. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Cambria had made my poisoned coffee every morning, and realized that my marriage hadn't just ended. It had been a slow-motion assassination attempt. But I was still alive, still thinking clearly for the first time in months, and I had evidence of everything they'd done. Cambria thought she was the victim of a sophisticated con artist. Brooks thought he was a master manipulator who'd covered his tracks. They were both about to learn that compliance officers are very good at uncovering the truth, and even better at documenting consequences. The pharmaceutical industry conference was held annually at the Grand Lakeside Resort, 30 miles outside the city. Every major company sent representatives, making it the perfect venue for networking, deal-making, and, in my case, public accountability. I'd been attending this conference for 12 years. Cambria had joined me for the last 5, using it as an opportunity to build professional relationships and advance her career. This year, she was in federal custody, but I decided to attend anyway. Brooks had made bail, surprisingly. His lawyers had argued that he was a flight risk only if he felt cornered and that house arrest with monitoring would be sufficient. The judge agreed, probably influenced by Brooks' cooperation with federal investigators. What the judge didn't know was that Brooks would be attending the conference. I'd learned this from Lacey in compliance, who'd seen his name on the attendee list. Apparently, Brooks was still trying to maintain his professional facade, still pretending to be Zane Merrinor, legitimate pharmaceutical executive. He's scheduled to give a presentation on regulatory compliance, Lacey told me. The irony is incredible. What's the presentation about? Ethics in pharmaceutical development. I almost laughed. Brooks was going to lecture industry professionals about ethics while under federal indictment for fraud. Lacey, I need a favor. Anything. Can you get me added to the speaker schedule? Same session as Brooks? She raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Public accountability. The conference started on Friday morning. I arrived early, checking into the resort and reviewing my presentation materials. I'd spent weeks preparing, organizing every piece of evidence into a comprehensive case study. The title of my presentation, Compliance Failures, a Case Study in Systematic Deception. Brooks was staying at the same resort, I discovered. He'd registered under his real name, Kellen Brooks, apparently confident that few people would make the connection to Zane Merrinor. I saw him at the opening reception, working the room like he belonged there, still handsome, still charming, still wearing expensive suits. He was talking to Margaret Henderson from the country club, probably trying to salvage some professional relationships. Our eyes met across the room. Brooks smiled and raised his glass in a mock toast. He had no idea what was coming. Saturday afternoon was the compliance panel. Brooks spoke first, delivering a polished presentation about regulatory integrity. He was smooth, professional, convincing. Several audience members took notes. Then it was my turn. Good afternoon, I began, standing at the podium. My name is Wilder Sornell, and I want to tell you about the most sophisticated compliance failure I've ever encountered. I clicked to my first slide, a photograph of Brooks and Cambria at the Ritz-Carlton. This is Kellen Brooks, also known as Zane Merrinor, and my wife Cambria. They're both currently under federal indictment for pharmaceutical fraud. The audience stirred. Several people turned to look at Brooks, who had gone completely still. For 18 months, they used my company as a front for illegal pharmaceutical distribution. They created fictional clients, authorized shipments of unregulated compounds, and systematically violated every FDA regulation designed to protect public safety. I clicked to the next slide, shipping manifests with Cambria's signature. These documents show authorization for compounds that don't exist in any FDA database. They were shipped to residential addresses, sold through dark web channels, and distributed without any safety testing. The audience was completely focused now. This wasn't a theoretical case study. This was real, immediate, involving someone sitting in their audience. But the compliance failures went beyond professional misconduct. They included systematic surveillance, financial fraud, and attempted homicide. I clicked to a slide showing the surveillance equipment we'd found in my house. Mr. Brooks and my wife installed listening devices and cameras in my home. They tracked my movements, recorded my conversations, and slowly poisoned me with arsenic over 8 months. Someone in the audience gasped. Brooks stood up, his face flushed. "This is inappropriate," he called out. "These are unproven allegations." "Actually, they're documented facts," I interrupted. "FBI evidence, laboratory analysis, federal indictments, all public record." I clicked to the next slide, Brooks' mugshot from his arrest. Mr. Brooks has been arrested on federal fraud charges in 6 states. His real name is Kellen Brooks, and he's wanted for securities fraud, identity theft, and pharmaceutical violations dating back 15 years. Brooks was moving toward the exit, but the room was packed. He'd have to push through dozens of people to escape. The most important compliance lesson here, I continued, is that regulatory failures always escalate. What starts as minor documentation issues becomes systematic fraud. What begins as professional misconduct becomes criminal conspiracy. I clicked to my final slide, a photograph of Cambria in handcuffs. My wife thought she was advancing her career by working with an experienced executive. Instead, she became complicit in federal crimes that will likely result in a 10-year prison sentence. The room was completely silent. "Questions?" I asked. Margaret Henderson raised her hand. "Mr. Sornell, how did you discover the surveillance equipment?" "My neighbor noticed suspicious activity around my house. We conducted a systematic search and found 3 devices: audio, video, and GPS tracking." Another hand went up. "What about the poisoning?" "Chronic arsenic exposure over 8 months. The FBI laboratory confirmed the presence of arsenic in coffee samples from my kitchen." Someone asked, "How did they expect to get away with this?" "They had diplomatic credentials that would have allowed them to claim asylum in Venezuela. They also had forged documents listing me as deceased, which would have eliminated any legal complications." Brooks had finally reached the exit. As he opened the door, I called out, "Mr. Brooks, would you like to respond to any of these allegations?" He turned back, his face twisted with anger. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Sornell." "Actually, I do. I'm dealing with a federal fugitive who made the mistake of targeting a compliance officer." Brooks left the room. The audience erupted in conversation. After my presentation, I was surrounded by colleagues asking questions, offering support, and expressing shock about the situation. Several people mentioned that they'd had business dealings with Zane Merrinor and would be contacting federal authorities. But the most satisfying response came from Dr. Patricia Williams, the conference organizer. "Mr. Sornell, we had no idea about Mr. Brooks' background when we approved his presentation. We'll be implementing new speaker verification procedures immediately." "That's probably wise. We're also banning him from all future conferences, and we'll be sharing your presentation with every pharmaceutical compliance organization in the country." That evening, I received a call from Agent Darren. "Wilder, Brooks violated his house arrest conditions. He's back in custody." "What happened?" "He tried to leave the state after your presentation. Apparently, he was concerned about his safety." "His safety?" "Several conference attendees confronted him after your panel. He felt threatened." I almost smiled. "So he's back in jail?" "Without bail this time, and your presentation has generated new leads. We've had calls from executives at 6 different companies reporting suspicious interactions with Brooks over the years. What about Cambria? Still maintaining her innocence, but her lawyers are discussing a plea agreement. Your public presentation has made it clear that fighting the charges would be difficult. After hanging up, I walked out to the resort's lakeside deck. The conference was continuing around me, networking sessions, cocktail parties, professional presentations. Normal business, conducted by normal people who weren't slowly poisoning their spouses. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This isn't over, Sornell. I forwarded the message to Agent Darren, then blocked the number. Brooks was in federal custody, Cambria was facing serious charges, and their criminal network was being dismantled by multiple agencies. As far as I was concerned, it was definitely over. I spent the rest of the weekend at the conference, attending sessions and reconnecting with colleagues. Several people approached me privately, expressing admiration for my courage in exposing the fraud. "It couldn't have been easy," said Janet Morrison from compliance. "Discovering your wife was involved." "The hardest part was realizing how long it had been going on," I admitted. 18 months of systematic deception. "What will you do now?" I looked out at the lake, thinking about the question. My marriage was over, my wife was facing federal charges, and my career in pharmaceutical compliance would forever be associated with this scandal. But I was alive, thinking clearly for the first time in months, and I'd helped expose a criminal operation that could have harmed countless people. "I'm going to keep doing compliance work," I said. "Apparently, I'm pretty good at it." On Sunday morning, I checked out of the resort and drove home. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, without the surveillance equipment and poisoned coffee. I'd had the locks changed, the security system updated, and all of Cambria's belongings removed. It was just my house now. That afternoon, Soren stopped by with coffee, real coffee, from a sealed container he'd bought himself. "How did the conference go?" he asked. "Brooks is back in custody. Cambria's lawyers are discussing a plea deal, and I've become somewhat famous in pharmaceutical compliance circles." "Famous how?" "As the compliance officer who caught his own wife running a federal fraud operation." Soren laughed. "That's got to be a first." "Probably." We sat on my deck, drinking untainted coffee and watching the neighborhood go about its normal Sunday routine. Kids playing in yards, families washing cars, couples working in gardens. Normal life, conducted by normal people who trusted each other. "Any regrets?" Soren asked. I thought about the question. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a federal case study. A woman I'd loved and trusted, revealed as someone willing to slowly poison me for financial gain. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." My phone rang. Agent Darren again. "Wilder, Cambria wants to meet with you." "Why?" "She's ready to discuss a plea agreement, but she wants to apologize first. Her lawyers think it might help with sentencing." "What do you think?" "I think she's trying to manipulate you one more time, but the choice is yours." I looked at Soren, who was shaking his head vigorously. "Agent Darren, tell Cambria's lawyers that she can apologize to the federal judge at her sentencing hearing. I'm done being manipulated." "Understood. For what it's worth, I think that's the right choice." After hanging up, I realized that I felt lighter than I had in months. The arsenic was completely out of my system, the surveillance equipment was gone, and the people who'd been systematically destroying my life were in federal custody. For the first time in 18 months, I was completely free. "Soren," I said, "want to help me plan a vacation?" "Where to?" "Anywhere that doesn't have pharmaceutical conferences or federal fugitives." He laughed. "I know just the place." That evening, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this whole nightmare had started, and wrote an email to my son Ethan at college. I told him everything: the affair, the fraud, the poisoning, the arrests. He deserved to know the truth about his mother. His response came back within an hour. "Dad, I'm so sorry, are you okay?" I typed back, I'm better than okay. I'm free. And for the first time in